Welcome to the Catch Up with Claire. Today we are catching up with Karin Romans. Karin is mom of one. She's the executive director for Friends of Nursing Partnership of New York City. Karin is here to tell us all about nonprofit life. She works for a local New York City nonprofit that helps connect new moms with services in the city, from immediate postpartum care, from educational services. She shares it all with us. And I am so appreciative of people like Karin who are doing this work in the community to make sure that moms are taken care of and also connecting with other new moms. I loved my conversation with Karin. She shared so much with us. We really connected on sort of the mission of what Friends of New York Nursing Partnership does. It's a mouthful. I'm working on it. I learned a lot. And Karin also shares how a lot of the skills and things that she learned from working with her son as a mother have parlayed into her leadership style and how she really goes about leading her teams at work. I think that is such a big and important topic because moms are superheroes. Like, hire me a mom every single day of the week, please. They can get it done. I so enjoyed this catch up with Karin, and I hope you did too. Karin, welcome to the Catch Up with Claire.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Claire. I'm glad you could have me on the show.
Karin, we have a lot to talk about here, but before we do anything, I need to know about the Christmas tree behind you, because when I saw it and you first popped on video, it was the most immediate sparking of joy that I feel like I have had. So is it a year-round Christmas tree? Is it we're just letting it linger? Tell me about that beautiful decoration behind you.
So we don't decorate for Christmas early. Like we're like December 24th people. My son, which I think I had mentioned to you, has autism. So changes in his routine and changes, even small things like Christmas decorations, can often throw him for a loop. Um,
Mm,
Plus he also pulls everything down. Like he just
okay.
kind of doesn't really respect the Christmas decorations. So we had put up in the late. And I will admit, I thought the beginning of the year was going to be slow, and we have jumped right into 2026. I think it has kind of hit everybody like a freight train,
Mm-hmm.
myself included. So I've just kind of been living with this office Christmas tree and every week saying, I'm going to take you down. And then every weekend comes around and I'm so exhausted. I'm like, you can just stay there. And I don't want to see the office because you'll just live there. So maybe this weekend will be the weekend, but it's not looking good for it. So it could become a year-round Christmas tree.
I'm into it. I'm so, when I saw it, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Ours, I know we've connected through my Instagram page, so I don't know if you saw it or not,
Yes.
but our tree fell. And we are also later Christmas decorators than earlier, mostly because December, we get a live tree and it's
Yeah.
just so chaotic, and our apartment's very dry in here. So like it dies quickly. So we have a very small amount of time that we can
Yeah.
really maximize the joy of it. But we moved from New Orleans, so we have a lot of friends that do a Mardi Gras tree, so they'll keep their tree up, take the Christmas portion down, but add in like different Mardi Gras throws and beads and repurpose. And I was very into that. It's not a realistic thing for us. So I'm here to fully endorse. Keep it as long as it sparks joy. And you know what? If it is because of a logistic thing, you haven't had time, whatever.
It's just one of those things I think as moms, you like prioritize what you need to prioritize. And this tree is just not getting the priority to come down. I'm like, you're just gonna hang out here.
I
So
love it.
awesome.
Okay, well, I'm so excited to chat with you today. Like I said, we connected via Instagram. We were talking right before we came on here how I've sort of just like openly solicited people like, hey, anyone who wants to chat about anything? Let's do it. But I think from what I understand you're doing, first of all, a mom used to live either in the city or close to the city. You'll correct me. Working now as an executive director of a nonprofit. And from what I've gathered of the nonprofit that you run is connecting new moms, postpartum moms, to basically different care services. So whether that is healthcare for themselves, healthcare for their children, support services, educational services, sort of all encompassing, and working very closely with various city agencies, I believe Department of
Mhm.
Health. So I really want to dig into all of that and the work that you do, because I think it's highly important. But before we do, you're also a mom. You are a mom of a child with special needs. Um, And there's a lot more about you that I feel like I don't know yet. So before we get started, can you just our audience an introduction to yourself in your own words?
Sure. So my name's Karin. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit. I have been working in not-for-profit organizations for over 20 years. I've been working with Friends of New York City Nursery Partnership for the past 6 years. I joined when my son was just about 4 months old, and he's now 6.5. You did mention he has special needs, so my son is autistic. Um, he is non-speaking. He definitely gets his point across by using a variety of different communication methods. It has taught me a lot, and I just started my own kind of Instagram handle to talk a little bit about what it looks like to learn from him and what that brings to me as a supervisor and in a leadership role.
Hmm.
Because I think that I've parlayed a lot of the things that I've learned doing advocacy work for him, and just learning from him about how long. I mean, some of the things that I think people take for granted that their kids pick up quickly, we've still been waiting for. Language, just one of a number of different things. And you just take everything in a different, you look at things differently, and it brings a lot of joy and a lot of heartache. And I think I wanted to parlay that into like what the work looks like for nonprofit. Um, we did live adjacent to the city. We lived in Hoboken. I lived there for 20 years. I've worked in New York City for 20 years. I've worked in a variety of in different organizations. I worked all the way from the financial district all the way up to Harlem, and worked at City College of New York in the fundraising department there, and absolutely adored it. I'm not sure if people let us still call Hoboken the sixth borough or if that's frowned upon by New Yorkers still, but we felt very city adjacent and we could get there almost faster than most people in the outskirts of,
Totally.
yeah.
Sure, for sure.
But a few years ago, we made a move to Connecticut for my son's schooling, and we've really embraced it. But I enjoy coming back, and obviously, I'm still very connected to the city, working with friends, and I still love getting into that city vibe. And there's a lot I miss about being in New York. And every time when I started watching you like going up and down the subway, like, oh, that's what I did for my pregnancy, and like I was working in New York and like doing all of the things. So it's been really nice.
It is. There's so much. Like people are always like, "What's it like raising kids here?" And what's it like living? I'm like, I don't know, you just do it. Like, I don't know, like, but I also it's kind of a hard thing for me because I think there's also this assumption of everyone like, there is a clock that runs out on New York, and it's something we're still trying to figure out, like, whether it's our jobs, whether it's our children, whether it's, like, the schooling and where we go next or if we go next. It feels kind of like it can always slip away, and so but we also are like, "I don't know where we go." Um, we've got nowhere, so I'm like, "I'm just gonna start documenting while we're here, what we're doing and how we're doing it." So, and it's connected me with some really awesome people. I heard you touch on and what I sort of heard you say in that introduction is sort of how you've interwoven your role as mom through into your role as a leader. And I think that is such something I didn't appreciate or really even understand until further along in my motherhood journey because I started as a like I had a surprise pregnancy at first and I was young. I was 25, just entering my career,
Mhm.
like working towards I had talked to my boss about this is where I am and this is where I want to be and he was very supportive, helped me getting there and then we like laid these foundational plans and I was like, "Oh shit, now I'm pregnant." Like and I felt very like I work in the technology industry, so very male
Um,
dominated, so I felt very much like I have to hide this portion of me, like, I have to hide the things that make me different because they're not gonna relate, they're not gonna invite me. If I talk about my kid, they're gonna be like, "She's distracted." But I love how you've taken the lessons of motherhood and transformed that or sort of, like, rewrote that into leadership experience because oh my gosh, like, hire me a mom every single day of the week. Like, the things that we have to battle to be on time for your first 9 a.m. meeting is insane, and I can't like, I'm curious, was that always an obvious for you when you started picking up on some of those themes? Was that always sort of a natural parlay, or did it take time to figure out, these skills that I have in navigating life as a mom, and especially life as a mom of a child with special needs, is it was that natural or was it something you learned? And also, just I want to be correct, and I can you just tell me the correct phrasing? Because I don't want to incorrectly label your son. Like, do you prefer a child with special needs? Is it a child with autism? I don't know, and so I want to like say it
Yeah.
correctly.
No, 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 that's such a great question, such a thoughtful question, because there really is, a lot of I think a lot of different opinions, and I think that I'm not actually autistic, so I can't represent the autistic community. We usually refer to him as autistic just so that people kind of know what his often hidden disability is. So child with autism is fine, and that's definitely something that we refer to him as. I also usually just say disability because, to be honest, like it is a disability. I don't
Hmm.
think we need to make disability a hidden word.
Hmm.
There's a lot of disabilities, and a lot of people that need to be embraced in different ways. And I think that actually ties in with the question you were asking me. Like, no, I did not figure any of that out on my own. I'm not that good. I actually was working with a mentor, and she had pointed out to me because I started working with a mentor because I was in this leadership role. We're a very small shop, so Friends is a really small organization. Um, and somebody had pointed out to me that everyone except people in professional careers have coaches.
Hmm.
And why shouldn't people in professional careers have coaches? And then some people do. Like the more I was digging into it, it was like, especially women, like trying to make, as you said, like often industries are male dominated. Like, how do you carve that out for yourself and how do you figure it out? A lot of people are hiring like career coaches and working with them. And since I was operating kind of on my own, I had started working with a coach. It was somebody I had known for a long time that I really respected in the nonprofit space. So we started working one to one together. And she had mentioned to me, like, you're observing a lot of these things and doing a lot of advocacy work. So we worked on both a professional and a personal level and how those things are brought together. And she's like, I think you're unintentionally bringing a lot of the things that you do with your son and a lot of the advocacy work into the work that you do every day and how you treat your employees and how you create policies. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I do. Like, I try and think about like, what do people need? And like, do we need to do this? And what is the policy? And how do we kind of respect who people are and respect mothers?
Mm.
We are very mother centered because, and I think we're different from a lot of other shops because we are an organization that helps mothers. So we've hired mothers, we've hired people from our community. So I have to constantly be thinking about like, how do I create space for them and how do I do that? And some of it is like taking cues from the things that I've done working in with Liam and working in the disability space, advocacy space.
So let's get into it. Tell me about it's also a long title. Friends of Nurses of New York City. It
Nurse,
I
nurse women's
butchered it.
Yeah, no, no, it's fine. It's funny. We were just talking about that this morning, and our board chair had mentioned that it's a mouthful. So it's Friends of New York City Nurse Family Partnership. We're a small nonprofit organization working obviously in New York City. We support moms that are part of the Nurse Family Partnership. So Nurse Family Partnership is actually a national organization. It's in
Mhm.
over 40 states. In New York City, as you mentioned, and kudos to you for reading all the material I had sent over. It is part of the Department of Health and Mental Health. So Nurse Family Partnership is a public health initiative in New York City. And it targets women that are WIC and Medicaid eligible that are pregnant. So right now they must be 28 weeks pregnant or less. There is possibly some changes coming to that area. And they provide them with a nurse, and the nurse stays with them from the time that they are pregnant through the child's 2 years of age. And the
Wow.
way I like yeah, it's pretty incredible, and the way I like
Yeah.
to think about it is that they stay with them to focus on maternal health, and improving and achieving maternal health outcomes. They work on child development outcomes, and then also the mom's self-sufficiency. The program is really designed as an anti-poverty initiative,
Hmm.
and I think it's done a lot to make sure that people have the support and resources. Because you think about it, and you can't not that you I shouldn't say you can't stop generational poverty, but one of the most effective ways to try and stop generational poverty is to interject before people even have kids and before that cycle continues and making sure that we provide resources and support to mothers. Um, so that initiative has been around since 2003. Our co-founders were, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I didn't even realize. No,
Yeah.
2003. Wow.
Yeah, so they celebrated 20 years just a couple years ago. And then our co-founders were doing a tour of different community organizations in New York City. They found this and they found out that there was like a lot of ways that they could support self-sufficiency that were disappearing and not being going to be part of the public programming anymore. So they established private support through a nonprofit organization, and we specifically support moms. So we focus on self-sufficiency and family sustaining careers, also in creating community. Since the program is a home visiting service, there's not as much of that one-to-one mothering community. And we do that through four primary program areas. So we help provide small, high impact grants that help people out through scholarships, certifications, books, childcare, a variety of different means. We also provide emergency stopgap programming. We provide educational support through a career pathway program and also an entrepreneurial program. And then we also foster community connections by holding these events for moms to get together and to come together and learn more about different aspects of motherhood. And then also just sometimes just to get together and have some fun.
And that last part, because I feel like all of it coming together is so important, but especially the connection and the community aspect and being able to connect with another new mom or young mom or mom who's in the same phase of what you're going through. Even though you can't necessarily solve each other's problems, being able to know you're not the only one going through it or experiencing that, I think facilitating that for women is, and for moms especially, is so important because it's kind of hard to find sometimes. And I feel like, especially when you're in the vulnerable period that is postpartum, and not just immediately postpartum, like you're still in a diaper and have a little baby, but I think even 1 to 2 years, which I heard you say you guys support your mothers up to 2 years old. I really think that 1 to 2 year, like that, when your baby's in the ones, is kind of propelling in a way because you're out of, for the most part, you're not wearing a diaper anymore, your baby is. You're still having a baby who's rapidly changing, rapidly developing, but you've kind of gotten a little bit of your sea legs underneath you and you're kind of figuring out what is next and where do I go from here? And I think that's where a lot of the services and programs you talked about at the beginning of entrepreneurial services, educational services, how do I now support this new life I have with a baby? How are you guys, I'm curious, how are you measuring sort of impact being around for since 2003? Do you work with Department on Health on sort of because I think what you said too around pre-parenthood, focusing on anti-poverty initiatives, like prepping for that. Have you been able to measure sort of the impact that you guys have been able to have since you've been around?
Well, that's a great question. So, like, and just to clarify, so NFP has been a public health initiative since 2003. We actually founded, and I should have said this, in 2017, and that was when, so we'll
Okay.
be celebrating our 10-year anniversary next year. We do measure impacts. We do that in a couple of different ways for the different programs. Surveys, I would say, are the most common. So, like, how many, so we'll put out how many Hearts Desire Award we fund. So last year we funded or we provided services to 250 families across all five boroughs. We awarded over $130,000 in Heart's Desire Fund scholarships.
Wow.
And then we do survey the moms to see if they have achieved their goals, if they were able to provide those, and if we were able to do those. So we do measure the impact in our entrepreneurial and career pathways programs. We do measure how many clients have graduated. We also measure like what they learned from the programming. For example, in our entrepreneurship class, it's not just about getting through the class, and we do provide stipends because we want this to look like real work, and have the moms know that if they're taking it seriously, that we're making sure to reward that and to acknowledge their continued commitment to the course because Lord knows it's very hard to juggle a baby and come to a course and do all of that stuff and probably be working at the same time. So we want to
Mhm.
acknowledge that. The other kind of aspect of that is also what they learned out of the course. So, did they learn new terminology? Did they learn financials? Did they learn about marketing? Is there something that they had done that kind of grew their skill set? And then with our elite programs, that's far more just, I would say, not necessarily quantitative, but more qualitative because, we kind of get the feedback from clients about what they liked, what they learned, maybe if it was an educational session, but then also just little kind of feedback stories from the nurses. You had mentioned like how good it is to bond and see other mothers, and it's hard to find those. I would say, especially for the communities that we work in, it's often very hard to find mommy and me classes, and they're not as
Mhm.
accessible. And there can be some real barriers. I see so much amazing things happening in New York City, but there are, certainly we all know about the subway struggles and, how often elevators are closed and bringing strollers up and down the stairs and those kinds of things are certainly barriers to getting to these classes. So we often measure like their commitment to coming and like how often they're there and do they get to forge community and stories from nurses. Like one of the nurses had mentioned to us that she had 4 clients that she brought to an event. And she was like, got them all there. They all had a great time. They all were fun. And they stayed friends, and that little community of moms is now friends still 2 years later. And they're all about to graduate, and they've all had different pieces of the program and been involved in different ways. And they are still friends and they still tell their nurse, like, oh, I saw so and so and she said to tell you this. And those kinds of stories to us are really especially heartwarming.
And it really is so true. I feel like it's a balance, as is everything with motherhood, of the getting there. Like, if you're there, I feel like it's usually worth it. Like, that you find the connection, but it's not that getting there isn't not nothing. Like, double negatives there. But, like, I totally, I mean, I was just chatting on with my DMs with a mom this morning who was saying, like, one of her daycare mom friends moved only 20 minutes away, and I was like, "You don't have to qualify the only. 20 minutes away is most likely another borough, is basically, like, the same amount of effort as getting on the plane sometimes, what you have to pack up with the baby, with the kids, whether you're driving, you're taking the subway." And, like, I was saying to her, my sister lives in Brooklyn, and the subway stop closest to her doesn't have an elevator, which, like, can I wear the baby? Yes, but then I am walking 11 blocks to our subway, carrying a baby with a diaper bag on my back. Then I can't put her down anywhere with 2 other kids. Like, it's not like the challenges of having to travel are very real, and especially in the city, I would imagine with moms in the suburbs too as well. But I think the focus of having either that nurse or that sort of leader connecting these women, sort of, one, giving them the boost or the confidence of saying, like, make this one work. Like, there are some other ones, maybe don't prioritize, like, but there's going to be other women here that connect with you, like, figure it out for this one. Or also being local and having enough opportunities that it is a couple blocks away and it is in your own community, it is in your own backyard. Regardless, I think just everything that you're saying sounds and is so important. I'm curious too. I'm also like, why did I not hear about this? I mean, there's so much good work going on in this city that we don't all know about. But I'm curious the connection with Department of Health. So you are a nonprofit, but you're working with Department of Health to be connected. I'm guessing somehow, like, through OBGYN visits, you get connected with the women. Through deliveries, you get connected with women who qualify for the programs. How are you connected with the nurses? Like, I see a
Yeah,
lot
sure. No, no,
like, there's an ecosystem here that
yeah,
feeds into this.
no, no, no. And I would just say, like, Nurse Family Partnership itself is such like a best kept secret. And then Friends is even more of a best kept secret because people don't really realize that we've been around for, now nearly 10 years directly supporting. And all of our work, we do a lot of independent work. So I know our name is Friends of. However, we're not just equipping them with funds and resources. We're really running our own programs and doing work that has now fallen outside the scope of public systems. And really, one of the ways that we've talked about it together is that by having grants and resources and programming and all that stuff, it helps moms stay encouraged and stay in the program. Because if you don't have the ability to ever achieve your self-sufficiency goals or the means and resources to go back to school and to overcome financial obstacles, what keeps you in the program and like what keeps you energized? And the nurse can only say like, well, something will come of this. So we have, wonderful relationship with the nurses. So we work directly with Department of Health. So I have a wonderful relationship with the leads at the Nurse Home Partnership Program. Their director and I speak quite frequently. We work together with our staff. So we work together. Our two staffs are always kind of communicating and talking. The two of our staff are actually graduates of the programs, and they're the ones
Mm.
that directly lead all of our programs. So they are a shining example of self-sufficiency and what the Nurse Family Partnership is. They have created for themselves jobs in nonprofit career. So I think that the nurses and the nurse supervisors certainly have a lot of respect for the two women that are running the programs because they're graduates and a shining example of the work that they do. So we talk to them all the time. People find Nurse Family Partnership itself, I think, one by word of mouth. Certainly a lot of clients that have had great experience in the programs talk to friends and family and say, you should do this. They also are in hospitals, OBGYN offices. People can find them on city resources. They've done things like bus ads and those kinds of things. So people find NFP in different ways and different channels. And then once they're in and working with their nurse, we have like a communal relationship and we'll work directly with them. And while our grant and scholarship programs are only specific to clients that are actively engaged in 0 to 2, all of our other programs are open to current clients and then also graduates of the program.
So continuing to support the moms outside of that initial period, it's
Yeah,
ongoing.
it's ongoing. And we've found, our program manager talks a lot about the fact that like those first, like for her, those first year or so was so blurry and she was just trying to figure everything out and get everything to come together. But like she had done our entrepreneurship program and she did it when her daughter was just about 1.5 to 2. And she's like, it was so good. I was able to experience that and able to continue with services through friends because she was like, then I was kind of ready and I almost wanted, she's like, something of my own because she's like,
Mhm.
everything seemed to be revolving around my daughter and like what my daughter's needs were. And she's like, I really needed something to fill my cup. And I think that's such like why we've kept our programs open to those that have graduated from the program because you do need stuff to fill your cup as a mother so that you can pour out on the other side and pour into your kids.
Entirely. I'm curious about the advocacy side of your role because when we were talking before this, you said that you were just up in Albany testifying to state representatives. So, talk to me about the role advocacy plays and how you work at an advocacy level.
But yeah, I'd be happy to. So as you mentioned, I was up in Albany yesterday, and I was testifying. So we were invited, our co-founder, and I think you guys all must be in the same district area. Our co-founder is Chris Wazerstein, and Chris was a psychotherapist, and Chris had founded the organization in her retirement years, along with our other co-founder. And she is in Assemblywoman Seawright's district as well. So she had gotten us connected to her. And, we were really lucky to meet Assemblywoman Rebecca Seawright, and she invited us up to Albany to testify before the Senate and the Assembly during their budget hearings.
Hmm.
So advocating for ourselves,
Yeah.
obviously hopeful that maybe there might be some wiggle room. I know budgets are tight. I certainly got that news from them yesterday, but trying to make sure that we keep all of our different streams open and make sure they know, as you mentioned, the work that we're doing is kind of a best kept secret. So I think even some of them hadn't heard about NFP in a while, didn't realize what was going on, didn't realize that we had this kind of like nonprofit city partnership that was improving the lives of their constituents. So it was really such a great opportunity to share our work and be able to do that. I learned a lot, went up and sat for about 8 hours and then got to testify yesterday at 5:30. So it's a long day. I did not realize how many hours our wonderful representatives spend listening to different constituents. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of great causes in New York City. And it was just so overwhelming. I mean, this was just a human services, and I had colleagues in nonprofits that represent everything from housing to immigration to, needs for different communities to homelessness to veterans affairs. Childcare was talked about a lot yesterday in human services, and it's just this wealth of. It was really quite nice to see so many organizations being able to share their stories and advocate for what they need, and just kind of paints a picture of how challenging it is to actually fulfill all of these needs and how we all need to work together to make sure that we have things that take care of our communities.
I think it's such a interesting process, feels like not the right way to say it, but I think so I haven't been up to Albany to testify. I've been to Washington, D.C. twice. I had severe postpartum depression after my first son was born and worked with a couple of nonprofits at a national level. They called them like congressional days on the Hill. And we would go be paired up with our state representatives and talk with them about, sort of the motherhood agenda, maternal mental health, maternal wellness, and how, we need more protections at a federal level to help fund and support mothers essentially, and also focus on maternal health in general. Um, it was and I never had that experience previously, and I don't think I had an understanding of how vital your voice is in government, like outside of voting, but being able to pick up the phone and call the people that we elect or don't elect, being able to walk into their office, being able to visit them in Washington, D.C., to be able to visit them in your state's capital. It really never, until I had that experience. Um, so I think on the one side, it's encouraging that our voices and our causes and the things that are important to us, we have the power to put that on the table. And we have also the responsibility to put that on the table. I also think there's then the years and the years of negotiation. And you also see that there are a lot of competing priorities and how you really shape an agenda. I will say I'm encouraged right now by sort of this moment of, I feel like the motherhood agenda is getting, and like the childcare agenda is getting a lot of attention, especially here in New York City. We have a new mayor as of 6 weeks ago.
Yep.
And even with Governor Hochul, they've talked about universal childcare. And I think New York, obviously, as a state, is rather progressive in some of these things. But I think that it is also interesting then, like the sausage making, that like it's a give and a take, and how do you prioritize these things, and where does the funding go, and who does it come from? So I'll be over here cheering along friends of nurses in New York City, so that, that you guys, yeah, I'm glad you got your day yesterday to share and advocate on behalf of. I think this is such important work. I'm curious, Karin, because I heard you say that you've been in sort of the nonprofit world for 20 plus years and with friends for 6.5 or so. Um, what attracted you to the work that Friends is doing here in New York City? Is it the motherhood aspect? Is it something else? Sort of like, how did you come to be where you are right now?
Sure. So yeah, I've been in the nonprofit space for quite some time. And I just really liked nonprofits. I like the idea of being able to invest in communities and the gap that we fill between um, what society can provide and other agendas that are going on and services. I had left a job and was going to be a stay-at-home mom, and that lasted all about 2.5 weeks. And then I started like kind of like, oh, what am I going to do with myself? Like, how am I going to fill my day? I've always worked. I kind of, on the flip side, became a mom very late in life. So I was 39 when I had my son. So now, kind of like looking at that, I was like, that's my career's kind of always been my identifier. So how do I even shift gears and now go into this? So I came across an ad for Friends, and it was actually very interesting because our two co-founders hadn't realized they left the ad up on the website. And then I kind of followed up with them, and they were looking to step down. As I said, they founded this in their retirement years, so they were looking to find somebody to take over. So it was just a really nice fit. And I thought, having just had a baby, there is so much, like I had had issues with like things like where I was going to breastfeed and like
Mhm.
what, how I was going to work and how we were going to make the time commitment work and childcare. And like I had just been through all those things. And those were a lot of the things that Friends addressed. So I thought it was a really nice fit. And even though Friends is a direct service provider and we provide a lot of things that are outside of the scope of the public system and we do direct services, so much of our work is centered, and we've been talking a lot about advocacy on the advocacy side of things, um, not necessarily in our day-to-day operations, but just it's at the core of what we do. It's at the core of our values. It's at the core of the understanding of our work. People come to us with obstacles that are, childcare centered, that are housing centered. And many of them stem from bigger issues like a lack of paid parental leave, a lack of affordable childcare, lack of affordable housing, like so many things that I think right now in New York City being incredibly progressive. And obviously, I've been working in New York City, I've been following along and, very much kind of listening to the news and what's happening and following along on Instagram. And it certainly is, I think, headed in a really strong direction. Let's hope that everything takes the shape that it is. But I think a lot of those gaps are what has created the need among our clients. So we couldn't talk about what we do without acknowledging those things that are happening. So for me, it just has been this really nice thing that came and shaped um, my work. Um, and I think for our board members too, I wanted to acknowledge that's wonderful that you've gone and fought in Washington and I think that must have been such a challenge to kind of deal with being young and being in the middle of your career and trying to figure out postpartum depression. I'm so glad you've got resources and that you're talking about it and advocating because it is such a big issue. Many of our clients deal with mental health issues and they're often undiagnosed and unnoticed, and the nurses do the best that they can. And there's still, I think, way too much stigma around mental health. And that community and the needs of behavioral health, I think, are just not yet fulfilled. So I think that we need to talk about those things more. And it's so important that whenever we have board members join, and our board is now, I think, full of really people that are energetic young mothers. And they always talk about, like, well, I had this experience in my pregnancy, and I want to make sure that people have the resources they need because it's important to me. Because, even with resources, I felt this way. That happens so much.
Too much. It happens too much. And like, I feel like people are sometimes like, oh, yeah, we know you had postpartum depression. But I'm like, I won't shut up about it because until you go through it, you don't know. And it's one thing to hear about it, and it's a totally other thing to experience it. And it takes you such like I was so caught off guard. And I feel like what you're saying, like even with like well-resourced, like I have immense privilege to have the care that I did, but I still didn't even know what was happening to me. And I think there's also this sort of assumption that people are just okay. And it's like, oh, well, you're just a mom now. Like you're just going to figure it out. And this sort of like label of maternal instinct that people talk about does women and mothers such a disservice because I'm sorry, but like WTF is that? Like I didn't feel like I had any instinct. I was like, but in a way it was very just like I must protect the baby. Like in my brain, that's what I was doing. It was keep this baby alive, not like didn't feel like warm and fuzzy. But I remember my doctor at I didn't even have an OBGYN in the city. Like that's how unserious I was about, like I had to go on the internet, find an OBGYN. I picked it based on who took my insurance and was closest to my apartment and like had no other and availability to see me. Like those three things, like, will you take me? Will you cover my insurance? And can I walk to you? And the very first appointment I walked in and she was going through my chart and she was like, 25, you're a baby. And I was like, yeah, I definitely feel that way. Like you are confirming every scandal in my head right now. Like I felt like a scandalous teenager who got knocked up. Like, and so and there were all of these signs, I think, in my pregnancy of like, maybe we should check in. Like, how is she really doing? And it wasn't until my 6 weeks postpartum visit where they give you the Edinburgh scale of like, do you find joy? Are you laughing as much? And like read it. And I got a perfect score. Like it was either like out of 26 or 27. Like and it was like, she did my visit. She was like, everything looks great. Just fill this out and you'll be on your way. And she was like, are you okay? Like, let's talk about this. Do you have support in the city? And I was like, no. And she's like, family. And I was like, my mom was visiting, but now she's back home. And she was like, okay, well, I'm going to write you a prescription for Zoloft and I think you should find a therapist. And I was like, what's that? And she's like, I'm going to call in a couple of weeks. She never called. I went home and very like, I feel like sometimes things just kind of happen the way they're meant to. I was on this like mom's Facebook group and the Motherhood Center in Midtown had just opened a couple months previously. And I was on this mom thread and someone was talking about new mom groups and like getting together in person. And I was still on maternity leave. So I was like, I'll just check out this group. Went down there and it was like, wow, everything we're talking about is coming full circle through the story. I had to take the subway, but I was too nervous. So I ended up calling an Uber. I was running so late. I was like, oh, 10 a.m. I'll be fine. I woke up, fed the baby, fell back asleep, had already signed up and paid for this class. Like it was so many things. And I walked in with like 10 minutes left and I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so late. They're like, come on in. And I think the coordinator of the group kind of picked up on things. Like I was very like nervous, anxious, trying like, can I feed my baby? Is it allowed here? And they're like, yeah, like do whatever you got to do. And she's like, we would love for you to join us again next week. Like we do this class every week. And I was like, okay. And just her saying that to me, like, we'd love to see you again was kind of enough in my head to be like, make the effort, go to the group. And I went 2 or 3 more times. And after like the third one, they're like, so we have additional support services. Not all moms need them, but if you want more support, I think like I felt comfortable enough starting to share. It ended up being diagnosed with severe, and I didn't bring it up that I like had this diagnosis because my doctor didn't explain it to me. She wasn't like, this is what I was just like, I'm not picking up this prescription. Like, what do you mean just start taking this thing that like you're not explaining to me? Anyway, they got me into treatment and I ended up being in their in their partial hospitalization program for 5 weeks, which I say sort of like jokingly now, but it was very much like a life-saving service. It happened very quickly, but also kind of all at once I got the support that I needed, and it took people investing in recognizing what was wrong with me and that the things that I was saying wasn't just a normal motherhood experience, that it was more than baby blues. So I'm so appreciative of services and agencies. And sometimes it takes a couple of knocks on the door to be like, hey, we're flagging this for you. Like, it's not just the 15 minutes that your OBGYN gives you at your 6-week appointment. Like resources like the nurses that you're sending out to the new moms, like having the
Mhm.
communities of moms being able to get together. Maybe it's not one of these things, but hearing it a couple of different times, and not to say it's postpartum depression, but whatever a mom needs support with, I just think that these services and like you said, it's the private, it's the public, it's the city services, it's the new mom groups, everyone sort of coming together to create this ecosystem of support because like that's what we need.
It is, and that's so it's so interesting you mentioned the Motherhood Center. So I absolutely love, and it was funny, I was gonna bring it up. Have you ever heard of the Motherhood Center? And then you said it. We are huge fans of Paige Bellenbaum, who founded the Motherhood Center and talks like so
It
amazingly
was
about.
Paige who was the group leader and
Of course
I
it
like
was. Of course it was.
of
We love
course it was.
Paige. You love a good Paige shout out because I wasn't going to mention her name, but now that you have, so Paige is a friend in Nursing Partnership. She does a lot of trainings for nurses. She also started working with our staff last year and running support groups specific to clients. And she's also been working with our staff. So I don't know if she knows this or not, but she actually inspired one of our staff to start doing, who has 3 kids of her own, to start doing like a mom ask mommy group that has been like just started and starting to take off. And it was inspired by like some of the work that Paige has done and like her thoughtful approach to creating community. So we really love working with Paige. Paige is a huge NFP advocate and she's just fantastic. Also will say like it's so true that like people have these different circumstances of like mental health issues and depression or whatever had happened and they aren't taken seriously, and you think about certain communities, and especially for communities of color, like their concerns are taken even less seriously and by and large. So I mean, I think that often or stigmatized by their own communities. So I think when we have our clients just kind of like making them aware of these things and talking about them in a really thoughtful way, in a really kind of you had mentioned that your doctor didn't explain it, like explaining it in real words. And we just had this conversation, like, instead of saying things like, we're providing medical services, like just saying like, we're providing support and resources. You can come talk to us about anything. And we just want to talk and make sure that you're connecting with us on motherhood and talking about the hardest parts of it. Just being really thoughtful in that circumstance. And I think I can relate to needing divine community. You know, I think for me with motherhood, I don't even remember all the things that it was funny you mentioned the different testing and whatnot. I think right after I had my son, I was fine. Like everything was kind of glorious and everything was good. And then, at 6 months, we started noticing like he wouldn't lift his hands up over his head. He didn't respond to his name. And then by like 9 months, I was having kind of a mini like, okay, something is not right. And we're like
Mm.
kind of noticing something's amiss. And, I was really lucky that I was lucky I joined friends, like things happen the way they're supposed to. You asked like what brought me there. It, it must have been divine, also a little bit of divine intervention. At that point in time, one of our board members was a very well respected um, therapist and psychologist who worked with children and especially children that had um, different developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities. And she kind of took note of some of the things I was able to talk to her about, like, hey, I'm noticing this. Like, do you think that's a concern? And she very kindly justified a lot of the things that I was thinking. So we were able to very quickly kind of get services. But there's still so much I think people don't get and understand about autism that even when you're talking to your own doctor, you're like, is that really? And it's interesting you mentioned your OBGYN kind of being like, "Oh, here's a prescription," whatever else. Like, we had expected this long process for when my son was diagnosed. We went to one visit, they observed him for, like, an hour, they talked to us for 30 minutes, and they were like, "Okay, your son has mild autism." And we were like, "My god, like, what do we do? What do we" and then it was
Mhm.
like, "Well, you should have called about therapy, like, yesterday. The backlogs, have you heard about the backlogs? Like, you need to get into therapy, like, tomorrow and start him with therapy, and you should have been calling." And I was like, I didn't even know, like, I didn't have anything to call.
Yeah, right?
And then, I'll never forget the first time I tried to call and make sense of this whole thing and get him therapy. I called our insurance like they had told me to do, and I was asking for behavioral health, and I kept getting connected to dental health. Um, and I was like kept asking, I'm like, "So do you guys like, can you just connect me to someone that can help me find access to services to help a child with autism?" And they were like, "We don't know what you want." So, I mean, the barriers to things and like just people not explaining things, like and having to find things on your own, which is, I think, actually one thing just to kind of bring back to you sharing things on Instagram. One of the reasons that Instagram is really nice, and I know people, go back and forth on like, are we consuming too much, doom scrolling,
Mhm.
whatever else. But I will say, like, for parents in a community that's wholly misunderstood, like, for us, there was so much stuff and even the medical community not fully understanding autism that when we started finding people online, it was like, "Oh my goodness, like, we've found our people, like, the people that understand us, the people that are making jokes and making Instagram videos about sleepless nights and the fact that you never get any sleep. Like that's still an ongoing issue for us. The parents that are making, commentary about the challenges of working with a non-speaker and all those kinds of things. Like this is our community, and it feels often really nice to have like the struggles you deal with acknowledged. I think in a really thoughtful way.
Entirely. I mean, I am forever a hopeless optimist, and so, like, I know we just went through the, like, 2016 versus 2026 trend, and everyone was like, "Well, times were happier in 2016." But I do still feel like that powerful side of social media and that I feel seen, I feel connected, I feel validated still exists and still can exist. And like, I try to, like, that's how I want to participate in it. And it's morphed, and there's a lot from tech giants and algorithms that are out of our control that we can't really. But I choose to believe if we look for that connection, that's what we'll find. And I feel like just as you said, it's so powerful. I mean, if it weren't for social media, I would have never found the advocacy organizations that made me feel I don't want to say healed, but like empowered by what I went through to be able to help others recognize their own signs. And like, I'm sure for what you were just saying, like, feel seen as a mom of a child with autism and understood. And yes, all of it is very heavy and hard. But if we can find someone who we can make light of it and make it feel lighter with because we feel that connection with, like, that's what we're all here for at the end of the day, just to get through it together.
Yeah, 100%. I think it definitely social media, while certainly has its downsides, can be a really human connector, especially for things that aren't fully understood, um,
A
in my
positive.
opinion. Yeah.
Agree. Totally agree. Karen, we've been chatting for almost an hour now. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've been doing with friends. Thank you for sharing um, so openly as you have with us. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about what's sparking joy. What are you doing for fun? Talk to us about hobbies. And if it's a busy season of life and you don't have any, that's okay too, because that happens. But talk to me more about what's fueling Karen as Karen.
I'll probably speak both personally and professionally because I mean there is a lot of I think it was really exciting to go up to Albany yesterday. That was sparking some joy. Like it's really exciting to be able to have those, even just to show those videos to my son down the way. Like look, there was mommy and she testified in front of somebody.
I feel like it's, Alexander Hamilton, like, you were in the room where it happens.
Hopefully, but like it was very cool. It was a wonderful experience. And then, I would say like certainly not getting any Christmas trees down. I have been doing a lot more advocacy though. Like I have been trying to participate more in our democracy personally, making sure that I'm part in the room, which I think is one of those things. I just talked to somebody yesterday. And I think this crosses both professional and personal lines that we can't make change without actually going to the events and actually doing the things. So being online is a piece of it, but so is actually going to the meetings and listening to the things and being part of the engagement. And the other thing that's sparking joy for me this morning, I had an executive committee meeting. I am really excited that we have so many thoughtful and engaged board members and that they are bringing their full selves into the room and that many of them are working parents and have a million other things that are pulling on their time and they're still sitting there excited to come talk to me about what our year looks like and what we're going to do and like events we can have and how they can help mothers and being part of leap events and all those different kinds of things. So those things are sparking joy. um,
It's come up a lot, in some of the guests I've talked to recently, and I was kind of bashing the year of the analog hobby because everyone was talking about it early on, but I feel like one way of that is being not totally offline, but taking what happens online offline and like what you were just saying of actually not just talking about it but showing up at the events, being part of the community. Someone said to me, you have to, if you want to be in the village, you have to be a villager. And it's actually been a theme now that has come up a lot, and I've kind of noticed the pull myself. So I feel like it's kind of the times that we're in, it takes all of us and it takes all hands on deck, and that means something different for everyone. We all have different capacities and time constraints, but I feel encouraged by hearing so many women say that to me, because it does feel like we all have something to give and we all want to give what we're able. Like it does feel, um, hopefully there are some ripples, for us.
I hope so. I hope so. I definitely think, I probably don't follow social media trends enough, but I think it's really important to get up and be in the room where things happen. And I think it's important to participate in your community, whatever that looks like. We mentioned I worked in nonprofits for a long time, and I think it takes a really special person to want to commit to something outside of their own community and whatever else, and to be part of that. And I'm really grateful for that, and really grateful for people's participation. And I hope it's something that begins to become a trend because we've seen more and more people not participating, and it's been harder
Mhm.
to get people to do things like volunteer and participate. But hopefully, this will be like a good trend in 2026 towards people realizing that getting back out there and being part of your community not only rewards you and fills your cup, but it fills the other people's cup and fills the rest of the community's cup as well.
Everybody has something to drink from then.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep. Karen, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for this conversation. It's really been a pleasure chatting with you today.
Same. I really appreciate it, Claire. This has been wonderful. Thank you for having me catch up.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Catch Up with Claire. If you did, I would so appreciate if you subscribe, follow, rate, and comment wherever you're listening from. Share it with someone else you think might enjoy listening. This is how I can continue to have these conversations and bring these conversations to you. Until next time, be kind, be brave, and be safe out there.